Welcome everyone to our American Mussar weekly gathering. This will be our first week looking at and exploring and practicing the soul trait of loving kindness, which is chesed in Hebrew. So we will begin, as we always do, with a short meditation. So please relax in your seat and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. And inhale through the nose and hold. And exhale through the mouth and hold. As you go at your own pace of inhaling and exhaling, if thoughts should come into your mouth, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems or for planning. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Hello, Joanne and Bonnie and Paul. Nice to see you. You were my surprises when I opened my eyes, the people who arrived during the meditation. So, as I mentioned earlier, today is our first week of studying the soul trait of loving kindness, which is chesed in Hebrew. And although I said in my email that there wasn't really much for me to talk about when it came to my thesis, I did realize there was one question, and that is, what does it mean to walk in God's ways?
Hmm.
So this is it's a phrase that comes up a lot in Deuteronomy. Like, for example, in 30:16, I command you this day to love God, to walk in God's ways, and to keep God's commandments so that you may thrive. So I want to just hear from you. What does this mean to walk in the ways of the divine? Yeah, Wendy.
Sorry.
We just read it in Isaiah. I wish I had it open, but it's to take care of the widow and the orphan and to know the things that are in Torah. It's the best way I can put it without getting out trying to get my Torah out. But it's just beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so maybe one example is to kind of understand the Torah, and another example is to take care of widows and orphans, take care of people who are less fortunate, who need help. So we'll hear from Elisa and then Joanne.
I think it means to emulate God. As you said in your book, loving kindness is an attribute of God.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an attribute of God, and one of the ways, and that is the connection with loving kindness, is one way we can walk in God's ways is to emulate God, such as doing acts of loving kindness. Joanne, what do you?
Yeah, I keep this on my phone. you know, and it's from I forget right. It's from the Shemona Esrei. No, the prayers on the Torah. You know, talks about, you know, things you can do that have no fixed measure, and other things you can do that ensure you a place in this world and then world to come.
Mhm.
And it's like visiting the sick, clothing the naked, burying the dead, comforting the bereaved, accompanying a, you know, dowering a bride, a poor bride,
Mhm.
burying the dead. And I added, plus feeding the hungry. Hashem fed the Israelites in the wilderness. I don't know why they don't keep that. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But
That is
those
a
are
great
yeah, those are
question.
the
I had
ones.
never thought of that before, but absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge one.
Mm-hmm. Feeding the hungry.
Yeah. Yeah, so these are all specific examples of things that God did, like comforting the bereaved. God comforts Isaac after his mother died, after Sarah died. Um, Visiting the sick, God visits Abraham after after his circumcision. So these are all, yeah, so these are all ways that we can walk in the ways of the divine. Hi, Harry, welcome. Nice to see you. Okay, and that's kind of what I'm sort of focusing on for my thesis is on chesed, and also this idea of walking in the ways of the divine. So we are going to do something a little different today. I've never done this before with this group. I want to get everything all set up. We are going to watch a little bit of a movie. So there are these great kind of cartoon videos by someone named Hanan Harkol. I don't know if any of you have ever seen them, but he talks about a lot of different Mussar traits. And he has a video about kindness. And so we are going to watch just the first couple minutes of that video.
So let's
I did not share in the right way. Do this again. I need to optimize to share sound.
listen to this, Daddy. Last week, I had to fly to LA for a conference. So I board the airplane. Wait, was this for your... What is it that you do again? My animated series on ethics. Are you telling me people are actually still interested in hearing your mishigas? So do you want to hear my story? No. So I board the plane, and I'm just getting comfortable in my seat with my book, when all of a sudden, in the row next to me, a baby starts shrieking. Oof. Tell me about it. I'm thinking, the one time I'm not being woken up by Benjamin screaming, and I end up sitting next to this car alarm. And I mean, this baby was loud. Even the other parents, who were sympathetic at first, were getting annoyed. What's the problem? Change your seat. Thank you, Einstein. Of course I looked for a free seat. That's the first thing I did. But there were already like 10 people racing each other to find a seat. And the baby kept screaming. So what did you do? So I'm sitting there trying to figure out what to do. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see a little 3-year-old boy wiggling out of his seat. He toddles over to the screaming baby and offers the baby his own pacifier. Psh, wow. I know. Here we were, a plane full of grown-ups trying to solve our problem. Meanwhile, this 3-year-old boy was the only one trying to solve the baby's problem. The boy is the only one who actually heard the baby. Kindness is one of the most beautiful human qualities, Hanan. The challenge is to actually make the choice to stand in the other person's shoes and help them. Well, obviously, Daddy, everyone knows that kindness is important. It's just not the first thing on people's minds. I mean, singing Kumbaya.
Okay. So what do people think? Do they like movie time? Was
That's good.
that good? So what's the kind of key point? What's your takeaway from this just little snippet? Yes, Bonnie.
I think that you don't need to do what in addition to doing the things that Joanne said, feeding the hungry and clothing the poor, there are simple things that we can do every day. And I was thinking of this when I was driving up one of the streets to get to a highway, and school was school was starting. So all these cars were coming into the street, and there were people on the side who were trying to get onto the street too. I wasn't in a rush. I had given myself a lot of time, and I stopped and let number of cars get in front of me. It wasn't a big deal, but I know what it's like when you can't get onto an entrance. And it wasn't an entrance onto the highway where you've got the red and the green lights and they're telling. It was just a simple thing. It didn't affect me, but it helped the other person. And I think if we think in terms of we can only do these big things, then we miss the important ones too.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So looking for small ways to kind of help the other person. Thank you so much, Bonnie. Wendy.
Well, I was thinking about the way that the people on the airplane were being affected by the young one crying, and how the 3-year-old saw it differently, and how the 3-year-old had empathy for the baby. He put himself in the baby's shoes because been there, done that probably. But then he just went immediately to help the baby, rather than saying, that bothers me, that bugs me, that's disturbing me. His mind, he thought differently. So I was thinking maybe empathy, and then you choose to do.
Thank you, Wendy. I'm reminded, well, let me hear from Joanne, then I'll give my thought.
Okay, so what it reminded me, what Bonnie was saying about simple things. I mean, oh geez, I lost my screen. Okay, wait.
We can still see you.
I know, it's so weird. Like the box. I don't know what my computer decides to do. But anyway, oh, here we are. Here you are. So, we had, I think it was a different topic, but, just greeting people on the street or talking to neighbors, holding the door for the elevator, or if I'm going out and I see somebody's coming in, like waiting and holding the door for them. And some people do that automatically for me, and that's great. And sometimes I ask them, I said, could you just hold the door? Like as I'm like 5 steps behind them. And they do usually, yeah.
Yeah, Joanne, I think you're talking about the soul trait of honor, which is kavod in Hebrew, where it's thinking about the divine spark in the other person, really good connection between the two. And that's kind of what I was reminded of when I was thinking about Wendy, because, we were having this discussion the other day in a class where it's like, well, does everybody have a divine spark, or is everyone created in the divine image? And what about Hitler? And what about this one? And what about that one? And one person brought up this idea that every baby certainly has like that innocence, that divine spark, and maybe things happen later in life or it gets really buried. But this child had no problem sort of walking in the ways of God, even though I don't know if God toddles along the way that this child is described as moving, but it was really there to kind of comfort, to provide comfort. Karen.
So my understanding of chesed is that it's not just doing something kind for someone else, something that we think is kind, but finding out from them what kindness would be helpful. Mm-hmm. And in this vignette that we listened to, it was only the 3-year-old that was able to find out what was making the baby cry. Like, what did the baby need to stop crying and to feel better? The adults were thinking about what they needed to feel better and kind of how to help themselves. But chesed is really trying to find out from somebody else that seems out of sorts why is it that you're out of sorts, and what can I do that can help you? And if you can help them, then in essence, you're helping yourself. It's like when putting a Band-Aid on and preventing the blood from flowing temporarily, you need to put another Band-Aid on unless you can figure out how to stop the blood from flowing in the, so that when you put a Band-Aid on, you take it off, the blood is still stopped flowing. So yeah, that was my take, is that we needed to see what it was upsetting the baby and fix that problem so that the adults would no longer feel stressed.
Yeah, thank you. And it is going to, it's such a transmission, it's such a turn, because this is a challenging situation. I mean, it's easy to play with the baby when the baby's being all cute and smiling. It's really hard when the baby's screaming its head off and we're in a small enclosed space and we're imagining, oh my God, it's 3 hours with this, screaming, So that's where the rubber really hits the road. Is sort of part of what I was hearing and what you were saying, is looking a level deeper. Band-Aid, fine, but can you really find out what's causing the bleeding in the first place? Wendy.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up the divine spark, because it's a little bit different. After reading the chapter 9, I said, this was just a note to myself. Don't miss out on your opportunity to share your divine spark, because, and I believe giving from self is giving from the divine. It's kind of cyclical.
Love that. Thank you. Carrie or Paul?
The video reminded me of how I respond to animals or anyone that can't talk when there's a problem. When I see an animal or a person in stress of any kind. Sorry. And my first reaction is to go and try to find out what's wrong. And many times in situations where most people wouldn't do that because it's a public place or something else. But I think that we need to, like the little kid, listen to the voices of those that can't speak, and just try to figure out how to help them. And those things, all kinds of ways to do that. But that's what I thought of, the animals that we try to help, and also babies, all babies and all kids.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And as you were talking, it's like, who else needed help in that scene? Well, maybe some of the other adults who were kind of upset and freaking out, maybe they needed some comfort too. Like, hey, it's going to be okay. The baby's going to stop crying soon. You don't need to be freaking out here. Marianne.
Sorry about that. So it made me think about adults. So when adults are behaving, let's say, badly or in a really annoying way, I think we're less maybe likely to step in and try to help, or say, like, it made me think, well, maybe I should say to myself, what does that person need? Why are they behaving that way? Within reason, without, getting yourself in trouble. But I think that would be a more challenging scenario, I think, with an adult.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would be, I think that's a really good question. And there's all kinds of gradations too, but that question, what does this person need? That's a great question. Alyssa.
I think that the 3-year-old showed selflessness and generosity of spirit. He denied himself the comfort of his own pacifier in order to benefit the younger child.
Yeah, so it wasn't just that, oh, I have an extra pacifier. This is my pacifier, so I'm going to do without. So, absolutely. You know, if we have like a whole case of pacifiers, maybe it's not even an act of loving kindness because we're not giving something up. We're not doing something extra. It's not a bad thing, but it's not as exalted perhaps as if we're giving something up of our own. So thank you. Joanne.
Yeah, this also reminded me, like when you pay a Shiva call, you wait for the mourner to talk, and you don't project onto them what you think they might need. You just respond to them, maybe. But I think that's similar, like seeing what that person needs and wants.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think is so special about Judaism that not everyone knows is that there are kind of guidelines for how do you approach a mourner. And I know a friend told me his wife died a few years ago, and people would say, well, let me know if you need anything. It's like, let me know if I need anything. What, I want my wife back. Can you give that to me? And, I can tell you what I need. But, the people who just showed up and sat with him or showed up with a lasagna or something. And that's all we can do sometimes is just show up and be there and take our lead from them. All right, well, let's I would say I'm going to give a big thumbs up to movie time. It seems like people enjoyed that. That was good.
Greg, can you put in the chat where that came from? So is it a website? What could you just say a little bit more?
Yeah, Hanan Harkoli has a website, and they're on YouTube. And he has like discussion guides to go with his videos. I don't know, he has maybe a dozen of them. I met him maybe at a Limud or something a number of years ago. Let's see, I will put it in the chat if I can find the chat. Here's the chat. Wendy, would this be a good time to ask your question, or do you want to wait and see if it comes up later?
It might be. So I just have another question too, but it kind of is about how you were saying if they had a lot of pacifiers, then that wouldn't necessarily be loving kind. But I was thinking preparation, and that's what I was thinking of after I read the chapter. I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, because the chapter intimates that if you're doing something and you're getting joy out of it, and it's like this connectivity between something for yourself at the same time. I was thinking preparation might be my question is, can it be loving kindness to prepare? In other words, what some of the things that Joanne was bringing up. How about if I had water, like for people, and if I did have some pacifiers, thinking ahead that somebody might need something. What is that? Is that loving kindness or?
Yeah, I think it can be. I mean, these are not like cut and dry, but I'm actually reminded of a story about, does anyone remember Luke Perry? He was on 90210, and he was an actor, and then he was in the show Riverdale, which my high school kids liked a few years ago. He was somebody's father and he died young. But in his obituary, they told this story where like someone was on a plane and like their kid was crying, and Luke Perry pulled out a balloon and blew it up. It was like a long balloon, and he kind of twisted it around into the shape of a sword. And he kind of like acted like a knight and gave this like balloon sword to the kid. And he said he kind of walked out of first class, like into economy, and like gave this kid the balloon. And he said he always carried balloons on planes in case like someone was crying, because usually it would kind of, and there've been a couple times where I've been like, damn, I should have brought a balloon on this plane. But I think that's kind of exactly what you're talking about. He was prepared. He did think ahead of what someone might need to bring them some comfort. So yeah.
And I was thinking of the long-term preparation that doctors and nurses do, and rabbis, and because like I was talking this over with my husband, he said, every time I meet somebody who's a doctor or nurse, and I say, hey, why are you a doctor or nurse? The answer is usually because I want to help people.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking maybe there's something to be said for that kind of selflessness, but also you get joy out of it. But
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
well,
all.
sometimes, we need to practice order with loving kindness. Some things you can only do with a lot of preparation. You can't become a rabbi, you can't become a doctor, you can't become a professional without a lot of schooling and preparation. And also in our class today, we're also talking about, you could talk about prayer. It's like we're not necessarily born knowing how to pray. We're not born knowing how to meditate. We're not born knowing how to play the piano. Like these are all skills which take preparation and practice to work on. All right, good question. And extra points for reading the chapter. If you read the chapter ahead of time, you can come with questions and let's see. So we've touched on walking in God's ways. So here's some definitions of loving kindness, leaving the path of least resistance to make the world a better place, doing something for another without expecting anything in return. Maybe someone can read this third bullet. Yeah, Bonnie.
I just need to move the screen a little. One who gives a coin to a poor man is blessed with 6 blessings, and one who comforts the poor man with words is blessed with 13 blessings. Baba Batra.
Thank you. Okay, so I will put this in the chat as well. Okay, so Baba Batra is one of the books of the Talmud. And so what's it teaching? What's this kind of idea here? Yes, Wendy.
Sorry, guys. I must be talkative today. Well, I think that the giving the coin is very physical and very temporary and helps the person right then and can help them for a while. But then the words, it's an emotional uplifting and can even be life-changing.
Mm.
So that's why it's kind of got the more blessings.
Yeah, it could be life-changing. Thank you. Paul.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the choices that I'm sure we all have, but I know I have about if I'm interested in supporting a group like on Cape Cod, we have those who are trying to improve the way that we handle water and the environment, things like that, I can either or Habitat for Humanity. I can either go out and I can help build a new home for somebody, or I can donate money. And donating money is something which is easy, and sometimes that's the appropriate thing because if I'm not capable to do so, then
Or
that's
a lousy
fine.
carpenter.
Or as Carrie said, or a lousy carpenter. Yeah, don't want that either. I think they tend to put those people on the digging holes part of the whole thing. But anyway, just that it's more. It's I think personally more risky to be putting. Certainly, speaking for myself, to put myself out there and to try and be there as opposed to simply donating money, because it means I I'm in a new situation, new people, and not always comfortable. To be there, to be present with somebody, whoever that might be. I'm also reminded there have been times when I was walking along a street, and I think I'd read something, or maybe I'd just recently been to a Mussar conversation, and I would see somebody who was clearly on the down and out, and I decided to, rather than look away, or rather than like just think I'll just give him a couple bucks, I'm sure he'll feel better, but to just look at him or her and just engage, even in the shortest of, I hope you're having a good day, or good day, or whatever it might be. Just and sometimes that is more fulfilling, certainly for me, and I think for the other person as well. They feel like they're being seen, as opposed to just they're part of the landscape and nobody wants to look at it. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. We get 13 blessings for offering comfort, 1 blessing for giving money. So you get an extra 12 blessings, and maybe 3 of those blessings are for seeing the other person, and 2 of those blessings are for putting yourself out there a little bit. And we'll see where would Marianne allocate some of these blessings. What else is involved with that?
Well, I think it's good to do both, but I think it also depends on how much money you're talking about. I mean, if you're talking about giving $500,000 to people living in severe poverty, I think that's much more helpful than having a conversation with them. So I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah, really good point. It's not to say that it's bad, and there's a magnitude. I mean, in this particular teaching, it says giving a coin, not a million coins. But I think it's also important, as you are, to kind of think in the broader picture. Well, does this like apply in every case? And not necessarily. If we could really move the needle with a big donation and impact a lot of people, for sure. Thank you. I think that is a great segue to the next idea that I thought we could cover, and then we'll go to the breakout room after we talk about this together. Someone read this slide.
I'll read. In 3 respects, acts of loving kindness are superior to charity. Charity can be done only with one's money, but acts of loving kindness can be done with one's person and one's money. Charity can be given only to the poor. Acts of loving kindness can be done for both the rich and the poor. Charity can be given to the living only. Acts of loving kindness can be done for both the living and the dead. Sukkah 49b.
Thank you. And you can read the second bullet too, please.
Should self-kindness be added to this list? Can we give charity to ourselves? How is self-care different from self-charity? I don't understand that question.
Well, maybe self-kindness, self-care, we don't talk about giving charity to oneself. So that was what was making me think, well, maybe that's another way that we can give ourselves kindness. Giving ourselves charity maybe isn't something we normally think about. I'm going to put this in the chat. What strikes you about okay, I see a couple people already jumped in, Bonnie and then Carrie.
So I've seen this a number of times, and I get very uncomfortable. And I get uncomfortable with the last piece, and I understand that it was done in a time where there was no such thing, I believe, although I could be wrong, as having an endowed gift that would come, or a legacy gift that would come upon your death, where where the first line says charity can only be given to the living only, can be given to the living only. Not necessarily.
Well, it says charity can be given. You can give charity to, this isn't an endowment like from someone who's passed on. It's not like, are you saying you're giving in memory of someone, or could you just clarify a little bit? Because I'm not sure.
Well, I know when, it was done a very long time ago. When
Yeah,
people gave at that time, that the whole idea of a legacy gift was not it was not even part of thinking. It wasn't. The money you had then. So
okay, got it. I suspect it's talking about something a little bit different.
okay.
Because if you're like burying the dead, you are doing something directly for that dead person. Whereas would you give money directly to the person who has already died? You might have a legacy gift where when I die, I will endow something to pass on and to help others. But I think it's talking about, I may be misunderstanding, but I think it's talking about something slightly different.
Okay.
But I also hear your point, which is that was an idea that wasn't around at the time. And it's a powerful idea and it's an important idea. And we wouldn't want to discourage that or somehow denigrate that.
The reason
in this
that I
context.
bring it up is that because I do a lot of fundraising,
Yeah,
and people think in terms of, well, this is a legacy gift, they'll get it when I'm not here.
yes.
And I turn around and say, wouldn't you like to see it in action now?
Hmm.
And the good and things that your gift can do now.
Yeah,
And that's not what most people think when they think of a legacy gift.
yeah, yeah. Thank you. Okay, Carrie and then Wendy and then Joanne.
I was thinking about this after we got your email on what the discussion was. I have a neighbor who has several pets, and he's not particularly good at taking care of his animals. And there's a beagle, and I am very attached to that little guy. He comes over and visits a lot. And I realized that this beagle needed a lot more vet care than it was getting.
Hmm.
And it also would bark like crazy when the neighbor was gone, and I would go get it. So this act of loving kindness is partially selfish, so that I don't have to listen to the dog bark all the time, and also I want to help take care of the animal. And I reached out to my neighbor that I would take the dog to the vet and get the things it needed. And much to my surprise, he was all for that because he just doesn't have the time. He really doesn't know what he's supposed to do for taking care of a dog. So I started doing that, and it does take time out of my day. And it's not something I normally would do, but I have established this relationship with the owner and a relationship with the dog, and I get very attached to animals. And so it's worked out. And now when the guy goes away, I take care of the animal here and all the animals, and he pays me. He didn't want to pay anybody to do this. He thought they would be fine by themselves. So it's been a process of educating him on how to best take care of these animals, best be a good neighbor, and take advantage of what I'm offering. And I have peace of mind most of the time, and the dog is happier. And so it's not a true act of loving kindness because it does benefit me in the long run. But I think it started out as one, and So I just wanted to say it's like checking all the boxes that you've been talking about.
Thank you so much for sharing that beautiful story. And yeah, caring for animals is absolutely explicitly part of loving kindness, and an animal that was kind of, in need and that wasn't having all its needs met. Thank you. Wendy and then Joanne, and then we'll do our breakout groups.
Just real fast on self-charity. I might think of charitable as being something a little bit overbroad in this case, but I participate in a lot of activities where mistakes are inevitable. So when I make a mistake, I find like I have a lot of charity for myself, and I will forgive myself that mistake, and then, we'll fix it. But I just think it just reminds me of when Paul was talking about, the building of the house, and when Marianne is talking about giving millions and things like that. I just think the most important thing that is the connectivity. I mean, this is just me, my philosophy. Anonymous giving, I don't like it, or I don't appreciate it, or I wish it weren't, because I love to know who it is. And then I feel given to, more. So just charitable toward myself, mistakes I make.
Thank you, Wendy. Joanne. Joanne, you're still on mute.
Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not in a position to endow a charitable organization. So I usually think that's done by a person before they die, or they always have, like, invest in Israel bonds and you'll get, this kind of return if you're so and so years old. And, that's another possibility, but not for me particularly. But I think self-charity, I think I was too self-charitable in buying stuff that I didn't really need, and buying too much stuff. And so my secular New Year resolution was to try to stop doing that so much, especially this month.
Mm.
And I've done much better, and now I can pay off bills and other things. And I'm thinking next, save for a trip maybe, because I haven't gone anywhere lately. And but I think self-care is very important, and I see that a lot of people, religious people, are not don't have do themselves self-care like maybe I don't know if they feel guilty or they're not supposed to, but I feel like you're supposed to take care of your body as well as your soul, and it's connected, because the soul lives in the body while you're alive. So, people who don't see doctors when they need to, or they don't take vitamins, I don't know, a friend of mine told me she had foot fungus, but I don't know if she really did, but anyway,
Joanne, yeah, I think we're getting your point.
Okay, all right, so you got the idea.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so for our breakout rooms, we're going to go back to this idea where we were about walking in God's ways. So this is from Exodus 34, and the divine passes before Moses and claims, Adonai, Adonai, benevolent one who is compassionate, gracious, slow to anger, and abundant in loving kindness and truth, preserving loving kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and rebellion and sin, yet he does not completely clear of sin. Oops, we've lost the page. There we go. So walking in God ways can mean emulating these attributes. So we all may have different thoughts about the divinity. Are these attributes that are worth emulating? And what would it mean for you to emulate loving kindness? So I am going to add these to the chat. And with your partner, yeah, just kind of talk about that. how might you emulate loving kindness? What others of these things would you like to emulate? And we will gather in a few minutes to hear about the conversations. If you are streaming on Facebook, this is where we say goodbye. Please come by the American Mussar website if you want to get on our email list. And if you want to go by the American Mussar YouTube channel, you can see the last 5 minutes when people come back together and talk about their discussion. So thank you so much for being here.
I was going to say, story.
Can I just finish this?
Sure.
So it does the difference between your opinion and the pizza is I asked for pizza.
Yes,
To the kids, I took a picture
different terminology, but yes, that's
and I
very,
said, if you ever want a slice, let me know.
yeah, that is very good advice. Very good, well, not advice. That's very good information. And I think I need to use that myself, so I'm going to borrow that.
Okay.
Now I want to hear what it was.
Karen.
So in my discussion, I mentioned that walking in God's ways, I actually thought that sometimes God gets really angry and we get to walk in those ways too. But my big takeaway is if I'm going to walk in the ways of when God is angry, let's find a positive trace. How does God get out of that? Well, he tempers judgment with mercy. So when I get angry and I realize it, and maybe I'm not exactly in the right, and maybe I am right, but I still shouldn't have that reaction. Then, if I really want to walk even more so in God's ways, I will try to temper my judgment that made me feel angry and show some mercy.
I love that. And I'm noticing as I look at the list of attributes, it says that God is slow to anger. It doesn't say God never gets angry. And it also says God forgives iniquity. So that's kind of what you're talking about. It's like, okay, even if I'm in the right, I can sort of forgive this other person. I can show mercy to them. So thank you, Karen. Maybe we could have one more person and then we can look at, Marianne, I see you're unmuted. Is that just by coincidence or did you want to share something? Okay, anyone else like to comment on your discussions? All right, well, I'm going to put into the chat sort of, and I'm going to also share in case you're on a phone or have a hard time seeing the chat. But these are some inspirations for our own loving kindness practice. A mantra, the one that I wrote is sustain others without the thought of reward, even if they do not deserve it. So that's kind of in this sort of mercy kind of approach. Or in terms of actions, something that you can do this week, are you inspired by any of these? Saying yes to help. Sometimes if we're too low in loving kindness or too high in loving kindness, we're not taking care of ourselves enough and our balance is more self-care. Maybe do more than your share at home. Love work less. Forgive someone out of loving kindness, even if you think they are at fault and should make the first move, kind of what we were just talking about. Or visit or call someone who is sick. So together, let's close our eyes once again. As we'll do our closing meditation. Taking a nice leisurely breath and a nice leisurely exhale. Allow your mind to settle. Ask the question, how can I practice loving kindness in the coming week? What is one small thing that I can do? One small change I can make to help someone without the thought of reward. Maybe that someone is me. Maybe I'm always doing too much for other people. Maybe I need to show myself some kindness. Maybe I can call someone who is sick. Now notice the light that's filtering through your eyelids. That's the light of your divine spark. Allow it to inspire you. Allow it to energize you to take this one small extra step. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.